Crimson has named Sir John Key as its first chairman, a move that co-founder Jamie Beaton hints could be the first move towards an IPO. The former Prime Minister's governance roles include a 6-year stint on ANZ Group's board and his current roles as a director of the NASDAQ-listed $190 billion tech firm Palo Alto Networks. He's got a couple of others as well. We don't need to mention them all, do we? Crimson Education Group Chair Sir John Key joins us live this morning. Sir John, good morning.
Yeah, you don't need to list them all off, Ryan. How are you? Good morning.
We'll be here all day. Very well, thank you. And how are you? And we've spoken about you've been involved with Crimson for a long time. You've been advising for a long time. What does the chairman role mean? Why now? What does it mean?
Yeah, I just think it's a natural evolution with the company. I mean, basically, it's been around for a decade. It's doing incredibly well. It's growing at very, very high growth rates, producing a lot of cash with a really good margin. But as we go to the next level, I guess, for the business, it makes sense to bring in a bit of greater bench strength, for want of a bit of a term, on the board, and so they've added me and another guy called Sandeep, who's got a great track record in technology, been involved at very senior levels with Uber and other companies in Silicon Valley. So yeah, this is really about the next phase for the business, if you like. But certainly, it's in great shape at the moment.
Yeah, it is. I've had a look at the numbers. I mean, it's just cranking. What's driving that growth? And as Chris Keel's piece in the Herald this morning suggests, is that next step an IPO?
Yeah, okay. So what's driving the business? If you think about it in simple terms, two parts of the business. One is the consulting business. So parents will want to do everything they can to help assist their student get into one of the top universities around the world. And that can start at a very young age, that program. And we provide everything from literally a sort of knowledge base, if you like, about how to make that application, make your CV stack up, right through to mentoring, giving people all sorts of uplift in knowledge in terms of sitting SAT exams and all of those kinds of things. So it's a very comprehensive program, and our success rate is multiples greater than any other provider in the market. So we're really the seen as the top end provider of those services, and that's been a big and core part of the business. Second, but massive market now is Crimson Global Academy, which is really online schooling. So we started the charter school in New Zealand, which was hugely oversubscribed in the first day here, but also globally we've had a online high school. And again, if you go and look at something like Stanford Online, that's been a massive part of education providers trying to reach people who don't want to go to traditional bricks and mortar school for a lot of reasons, or want to do a few extra sort of classes. So they're the two big parts of the business. There are other aspects, but that's the main bit. In terms of IPO, what is clear is that the business is getting to a size and scale now, and valuation, where it could take the next step. And there's three ways I'd sort of describe that. Number one is we just keep organically growing the business, as say, tremendous growth and lots of free cash flow on the balance sheet. Option one. Option two is a trade sale at some point down the track. So if you take a look at a company like New Oriental or TAL, which are both in China, they've been worth as much as about 20 or 30 billion, but they're very, very big businesses. They're listed at about 10 to sort of 15 billion at the moment. Lots of cash. I think New Oriental's got $4 billion on the balance sheet. They're probably looking for the kinds of a global reach that we have outside of China. And the third option would be some sort of IPO on either the ASX in Australia with some link to the NZX in New Zealand, and or the New York Stock Exchange, or a combination of both.
Do you mention some pretty big numbers there for those companies that are trading out of China? I think Crimson currently has a valuation of about $1 billion based on the most recent capital raise. What is the sky the limit for a group like Crimson?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the $1 billion valuation, without getting into too many numbers, I think you'd probably find, if you had a deeper dive into the numbers today, it's a higher valuation than that, and that would be reflecting just how fast the business is growing. And one of the
what are you talking?
well, let's sort of wait on that because I'm not a financial advisor. But just to give you an idea, the big growth, the company started by basically looking to a marketplace of, say, New Zealand parents. And maybe they didn't have the deep knowledge that, say, a parent in America might have about how to get your child into, say, Harvard, university. But what's been phenomenal and the enormous growth that's been happening has been in the United States market. So you would think that US parents would completely understand the system. Their children wouldn't need necessarily the same level of support and help. That hasn't been the case. And what's happening is that as we live in a more and more competitive world, the application rate versus the success rate of who actually gets into, say, Harvard, Yale, Oxford, Brown, any of these universities around the world is dropping. So it's becoming more competitive. And despite the fact that people will occasionally say, oh, well, you don't need to go to university, Bill Gates dropped out or whatever, probably the greatest predictor of success really comes from tertiary education and then ultimately to get in the modern world some of these top jobs, having gone to a university like Harvard or whatever, any of these Ivy League universities is a great starting point to get through the selection process for some of these tremendous jobs.
And now 6%, I was reading this morning, 6% of students at Stanford's intake for undergrad earlier this year were counselled by Crimson. It's an incredible story.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about a whole bunch of other stuff, as we always do, John, if that's all right. What should the strategy be, or how do you think the strategy is working for National heading into this election year? Obviously, Luxon hasn't really recovered his popularity. Polls are tight. It's going to be another one of those MMP elections. What happens?
Wow. Well, that's trickier than working at Crimson's strategy, which is pretty straightforward, actually. Look, I think it is what it is. It's been a really difficult economic time over the last few years. There's no getting away from the fact that the government inherited, a difficult situation with rising interest rates, a sort of self-inflicted recession, and therefore, it delivered lots of different things from cost of living issues right through. I think they need to do what they're doing, which is continue to demonstrate they have the best economic message for New Zealand, the best strategy, the best policies, and not lose their nerve over that. I think that they are doing that. They are demonstrating that things are starting to work. Most of the data we see actually is starting to get better. I know people have been waiting a long time for a recovery, but it slowly is coming. I think they've got good solid partners in New Zealand First and ACT, and I think you never know how the numbers play out and where everyone goes in the end, but I think they've proven in the last couple of years that they can govern effectively. So yeah, I'm not saying it's not going to be a hard, tight election because I think the reality is it is going to be, but I do think National can get home, and it just
with
needs
Luxon.
to. Well,
what's your message to those?
Yeah.
Because the backbenchers start to get agitated and they start to look at the polls and they start to think about their jobs. What's your message to them?
Oh, look, actually, change can sometimes be effective. You saw it when Jacinda came in and became the leader for the Labour Party for the 17 election, but that's really unusual. I think there actually is a lot of faith in Chris Luxon and his leadership, and I think rightfully so. I don't think anyone's arguing everything's perfect, because it's never perfect in any administration. It wasn't in mine, and it wouldn't be in Chris's or anybody else's. But I do think that this whole election will inevitably be fought on the economy. It just will be, because that's the big issue at the moment. And as we live in a world of changing AI and all these different things, I think people will say, how do I make the budget work and how do I make sure I've got a job? And I think if you look at, if that's your criteria you're looking at, then there's just no getting away from the fact that Chris comes from, a deep background in business and a knowledge of the economy. So, I think, is he the best person to lead National into the election? In my view, without doubt.
Very quickly on AI, and I know that one of the companies you're involved with is AI security adjacent, but there's this talk that AI is going to eat whole industries, software, for example. I was talking to Rod Drury about this yesterday. What's your take on that and the bubble talk that we had late last year?
Yeah, okay. So just taking reverse order, the bubble, there's going to be tremendous amount of spending in AI. We're seeing that globally. Much of that will actually be wasted because you will eventually settle down with some winners and some losers, right? But if you put that to one side, I am in the camp that AI is going to be the most transformative piece of technology that we've seen probably since the internet, right? And why is that? Because it starts putting power, at a very localized level in the hands of businesses. If you don't have an AI strategy and you're not trying to, basically replace every part of that, and I mean of the way you do things in terms of government or business, by using AI. If you're not thinking about that, you're not thinking straight. So you may have seen on last Friday, there's a company called Anthropic, I think, who are going to list it, around 350 billion, circa that kind of number, big number. Their equivalent of ChatGPT or Gemini is Claude, and Claude came out on Friday with a build your own AI model, right? And for business, and I just see it at Palo Alto Networks. I mean, we are just ripping that business apart, trying to use AI as an enabling tool. And by the way, we need to, because the bad actors who are trying to hack you are using exactly the same. But it's across every level. So I think it's easy to get hyped up on these things and all the rest of it. And I know all the sort of theories, but I think the basic proposition, which is we sometimes overestimate these things on the short term and underestimate them on the long term, is absolutely true. And it's like, okay, we're doing this interview this morning. I realize this isn't AI, by the way, but we're on Zoom. I've been on a board call in London that I got on at 4 in the morning, and I just jumped off to do this interview. Who would have thought, when we were together doing things in my old job, who would have thought I'd be doing this way, or you would be presenting your show in the way you are? And what's happened is new technologies have allowed the media both to change in the way it gives information and communicates with people, but to the way that we can do things together. And AI is going to allow every business to do things in a remarkable way. So I mean, I could just give you examples of what we're doing, but it's just incredible in terms of document creation, in terms of analysis of data. I mean, I don't know about you, but in the old days, I'd get onto Google and I'd look at something and then I'd work my way through a story. Now I just go to Gemini and ChatGPT. I ask the question, it sends me a link. It literally, I mean, I think it's phenomenal. And we're just at the beginning.
I'm still I keep things very old school.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
still
know,
have,
but I mean, yeah, so yeah, we all
but
do a
I hear
little bit
you.
of that, but man, it's just mind blowing your capacity to run businesses and look at data and analyze things and get information. And I mean, it's democratizing, power and control in the hands of consumers. But honestly, I mean, I'm involved in another business that supplies, this is going to sort of slightly blow your mind, but green concrete into, we have the only commercial way of producing cement at a much lower heat and therefore far lower emissions than any other cement around the world. Our biggest customers are all these hyperscalers who are wanting to buy our product to build huge data centers all around the world, so that they can keep up with the data demand and therefore the energy demand that will be coming through what it requires for Amazon and everybody else to deliver all this to us.
That's the concrete, but how do we power them and cool them?
Yeah, I know.
But,
Well, I think that's probably why the government's on the right track with an LNG plant. It
oh,
might
you
be a bit
reckon?
controversial, but they need some power from somewhere.
Yeah, but
Somewhere.
LNG, really?
Well,
And a
not
levy
really,
to
but
pay for it?
yeah, I know. Well, you got to pay for it somehow. That doesn't grow on trees, does it?
All right. Hey, we'll leave it
Yeah.
there. Sir John, great to have you on the show as always.